Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another exciting podcast interview. Today, I have two senior executives from Tropic Survival Advertising and Comet Ads. I have Jim Knutt, CEO, Jason Ibarra, VP Agency Director. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Brian.
Much appreciated. Thanks for having us.
You know, there's been a lot of conversation lately about dealers' desire to control their first-party data. One of the outcomes of better first-party data management is better delivery, eliminating duplicates. And the more and more I thought about it, the CDP momentum will find more value to dealer groups by creating better customer experiences, but there seems to be an element missing from the advertising or marketing. And today I want to talk a little bit about the importance of creative and what you guys are doing at your agency. But let's start with data for a minute. Jason, when you think of clean data, that has the potential of allowing you to create segments or audiences to send the right message at the right time. So much better data targeting when you have a unified database. Are you in agreement that in general, dealers' data has been so dirty that even your marketing efforts have been hindered by the lack of updated data?
Yeah, I agree with that, and definitely better than them not having any data on their side. But there are definitely inefficiencies in their data and in the cleanliness of it.
You know, Jim, you've been in this advertising world for 30 plus years. You and I are old compared to these young, creative digital folks that are transforming the world with AI. When you talk to dealers about advertising, obviously right audience, right timing, right measurement, but what are the KPIs that you're talking to dealers about today? Because, you know, I still get calls, Brian, I'm really not sure if my advertising is working. I'm sure you've been in these conversations. How are you explaining today's digital marketing, say traditional marketing channels working together, or an omni-channel strategy? What are you coaching dealers to look for?
So on our side, this is a conversation Jason and I often have together. I'm going to come at it from a traditional standpoint, knowing that an older demographic is going to be consuming or absorbing more traditional media. And Jason's team, obviously on the digital side, is working hand in hand with us. So that creative message goes from one traditional platform over to a digital platform, and it's done seamlessly. Omni-channel, a lot of dealers will talk about that as well. So when we look at it, we talk to dealers about, you know, KPIs. First and foremost, you know, who's investing in your brand and setting you apart? You know, what are you doing to differentiate yourself? There's a KPI there that's really hard to validate. In that, you know, this is something that could take, you know, a few years to develop and get yourself back in the forward conversation of who's the big player in town. Perception is everything. You might be the second or third biggest player, but when we get done with you, you know, your brand, when they're going to think that you're the biggest in the region, without a doubt, and that can be done through creative. As far as for how do we meld that then into traditional, I'm going to kind of throw the baton here to Jason, but I know he takes some of that messaging and he pulls that through as well. Again, our thought is, what makes you different? Data good, all good. Creative and the right campaign messaging, that branding is really going to set you apart. Even though you aren't the biggest, the best. I have a media background. You know who the hungriest media partners were and the media outlets were in the day? It wasn't number one. Number one was number one. They kind of sat back on their laurels. Their budgets were light. 2 and 3 and 4 in the market, man, that's who you wanted to work for, because they were rolling the dice and they were getting very aggressive, and we like that approach. Jason?
Yeah, and so when Jim's talking about more the traditional side that is a bit detached from a direct attribution, so it's really more about the building the perception over time, and it takes time. But as we cross over closer and closer to the digital side, and so even some of the what we considered to be traditional before, even television is becoming more digitized or completely digitized, if you will. We can actually start to track that through to a response rate and identify who saw it specifically, when true traditional you often can't. Although there are some really cool things that are happening that help tie that together. But on truly digital side, we can track that through the CRM, through to the cash register, and measure back an ROI on the campaign.
Jason, the Comet Ads division is the digital side, Tropic Survival, the traditional side. And so let's talk digital for a moment. For years, television was more about Nielsen ratings or share. Today, agencies can put pixels on the dealer's website. They can target households by IP address and then see if devices from that household come to the dealer site. Kind of a not a perfect closed loop attribution, but saying, hey, I know these OTT video ads were shown in these homes on these devices inside this IP address. Are dealers starting to understand a little bit more that television, especially digital television, can be measured today?
Yeah, they are understanding, because some of them are understanding that it's been digitized. So the conduit for the data to flow is there, and it's very, very clear as to how it happens. And I think some of them are surprised as to how much we're all being tracked by our mobile devices and what we do inside of our own homes. But I assure them every day it's all de-identified. And it's not scary. It's just going to become the way. Now it becomes a little bit more abstract for them, where they can't wrap their heads around it as easily, is when you basically digitize in the real world experience, and then start tracking that through. For example, a billboard. Or technologies out there now to say that your mobile device stood in front of that billboard and there was a chance you saw it, and then that mobile device later showed up in the dealership, so there's a chance that billboard drove the foot traffic. So there's no guarantee that your eyes locked onto that billboard, but by using your digital footprint, they're estimating that there's a probability that you did and later walked into the dealership.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. And, I just released the research report on CDPs, and I think over the next year or two, more and more of the larger dealer groups will be first to market to unify their data. But once the data is clean, it comes down to now execution, meaning how do I activate my data to reach my business goals? And that's where I thought your agencies stand apart, because instead of talking about, hey, how much I charge to run your Facebook or Google ads, you're educating your clients, guys, before we talk about ads and ad channels, what's the message? What kind of creative are you willing to invest in? You want the same stock images that every Honda dealer in the market's using, or do you want something to differentiate your brand? As you're talking to dealers, have they gotten numb on the importance of creative? Because it seems like a lot of the OEM co-op programs, it's like pick a menu. Here are the 6 agencies that are co-op approved, but they're basically all using, for the most part, the same OEM, artwork, creatives, templates. Can we get an update on what you're finding out in the field as you really are trying to help dealers be more effective with their messaging?
We like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Some of them get it, and I'll explain what I mean by get it in a second. But some of them take the bait, hook, line, and sinker from the OEMs, tier threes in particular. That everything's given to them on a silver platter. This is the ad that you need to run for this for this promotion this month, and if you want to. Some television exposure. Here's an ad that you can slot your name into. And why I say they're taking a hook, line, and sinker is that the OEMs are getting them to put their ad dollars behind the OEM, solely the OEM, and not their differentiated brand. So the easiest thing to do is just take the program as it stands this month. Co-op will approve it, no problem. There's going to be no pushback. And put your ad dollars behind the OEM's creative and continue to build the OEM's brand. And our thought is that these things are going more and more towards turning these rooftops into McDonald's. It doesn't matter which McDonald's you go into, the cheeseburger is going to cost you the same amount. You can expect very much the same level of customer service. So you're just going to go to the nearest McDonald's. And if the dealerships want to allow the dust to settle naturally that way, and just, then they'll really only be fishing in their own PMA. Eventually, the pump in, pump out thing won't be so much won't be an issue, but they won't really be able to squeeze more out of their surrounding markets and drive increased profitability. Things will kind of all settle out, that everyone's kind of maintaining about the same amount of profitability is what the hypothesis could one day happen if everybody just follows suit.
Jim, I want to ask you a question. Gentleman I talked to many years ago said, hey, Brian, at any one time, 3 to 4% of any local market is actively, low funnel, ready to buy a car. And when you're advertising price and payment and consumers know that next month that price and payment won't be valid, you're doing nothing to create a memorable brand, a brand presence. And I'd like you to talk to that for the dealers who are thinking of digital advertising or traditional advertising as, I got to make sure it's all co-opable. What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, so if I back this up a little bit, the first thing that we ask a dealer is, what is your unique selling proposition? What makes your BMW dealership different than the one just up the road here, 50 miles, 40 miles? Is it just price? Is it just price or item? Is that it? And the answer is no, it can't be. It can't be, because the manufacturers, they're all looking to homogenize this whole process and make it into McDonald's. So making it unique. So a few years ago, I tell the story of a dealership we work at. It was a BMW dealership, a very large group, and they would often spend their entire co-op budget within the first 6 months. So the rest of the balance of the year was on them. So they would roll the dice a little bit. And what we pitched to them was this. When we talked to them, they said, we will never get co-op for dealer-produced video ads. BMW at the time did not do that. And I said, well, have you ever at what level have you made an investment? Are you talking about a $500 ad or a $5,000 ad or a $50,000 shoot that you can advertise over a year or 2 years? So we actually went in with a very robust program and with wonderful talent and directors. And we got it through co-op, and we're the first agency in the country, very proud to say, that received total approval, green light from co-op, from BMW for their co-op program and the dealer produced ads. And what we're seeing right now is a return to that. That was a few years ago. Everybody seemed to have gone down the data wormhole, and that's all great. But now we're figuring out, okay, what's making them different? And now we're able to now sell the creative conversation to say, differentiate yourself with creative and your unique selling propositions. One of the advantages I think we have as an agency is automotive is a portion of our client base, but it's not everything. If we look at the two biggest spenders in advertising are automotive and furniture. What's interesting about automotive, because the ticket price is obviously smaller, but still large. Average ticket price is $2,500 to $3,500 in a store through the door. You'll see market conditions bear themselves a little faster sometimes, and come back a little faster as well when the economy comes back. And what we're seeing right now with some of our big furniture clients is they want to return to more brand messaging, and they want to find a balance now of, here's our brand, and oh, by the way, we have a 20% off during Mother's Day or whatever, but they're not screaming it. Now, I always say there's 3 different types of ad. There's branding. There's a hybrid, which is brand in the beginning, brand in the end, retail message in the middle. And then there's just hardcore retail messaging, which is L1 events or patriotic, the red, white, and blue events that everybody has. And there's a nice balance. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a combination of both. And you can build a bigger, better brand that will be able to weather the storms. If it's just price an item, I say good luck, because everybody else is selling that.
Jim, I tell my friends some funny stories, and one of them is, if my wife goes into a store that says sale, the thing that she likes is never on sale.
Right.
And if a furniture store, said, 20% off asterisk, most of our, the thing that I'm going to find. And I think for a group of people, maybe like myself, my time is more important. I know if I see $6.99 a month car ad, that is probably never going to be $6.99 a month. It's going to be something much higher. But I really want to know about the experience. I want to know about the time. I want to know about the transparency. That to me is more important than a difference in $10 a month. And I'm not minimizing money. I'm just saying that if the only thing you're talking about is price payment, you're not going to get me in the door.
And I look at it too, Brian. When I see well-dressed, pleasant-looking, on-air talent or real sales representatives, there's something about real. Most dealerships have what, Brian? 10, 15, 20, 30 sales, representatives there. There's a couple of them that are going to be very camera friendly. Mm-hmm. And it comes across like they're real people versus talent. And we can always buy talent and they can be representative of your sales force. But we like to have some real salesmen and sales ladies there, because one thing as a consumer that I look at my wife, she's afraid sometimes to go into the dealers because she feels she's going to get attacked half the time, and we all laugh. She goes in and buys as many cars as anybody else. But there's something very pleasing and attractive about seeing your people on camera with a smile and shaking a hand and walking around an automobile and taking them for a drive and witnessing the experience there. That experience is what we're selling. The price an item, you're going to get a good deal. You're going to get as good a deal as you need to get. That's what a good deal is. Mm-hmm. Everybody's different.
And if we all compete, if price and items is the only thing left to compete on, and everything else is homogenized and uniform, it's a race to the bottom. But then there's map pricing. There's a floor to that bottom that will reach very quickly. And then what?
Well, you brought up a point earlier, Jason, is that, for the electric vehicles, Ford and GM have basically said, look, we're going to sell them at a fixed price. The dealer's going to have the fixed profit margin. And of course, many people laughed. It's like, Brian, when those cars don't move, they're going to be turning back that stupid model and asking dealers for help. In fact, just this week, neighbor was trading in their Cadillac, and they said, Brian, it's back to normal. They offered me $5,000 off MSRP. I didn't even ask for it. I was like, oh, nice, here we go.
Nice.
Here we go. The days of I'm only selling at MSRP. I'm sticking. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that you're absolutely right. If dealers don't brand themselves and create a unique value proposition, then it just feeds into the OEM story that these are just delivery centers. Pick whichever delivery center you want. They're priced the same, the experience the same, but we know that is never going to happen. they may try to, but the experiences are going to be so different. People are going to want to be in the places that have the better overall customer experience. And that's why I love your tagline, which I believe is just part of your culture, that you're a creative first agency. I haven't heard anybody in automotive in any of the digital programs say we're a creative first agency. You've been doing this for 35 years. What's one maybe common thread, Jim, that dealers who start with you, maybe they've been kind of lured into generic campaigning, and then your team gets in there, you work on that value prop, that unique message, they start seeing the creative. What's some of the feedback you're getting?
So we've literally had dealerships come to us because their competition has been taken to another level. The brand has been built and polished. And even though they're not as big, I'm talking about dealerships that are number 1 or 2 in their market, and we're working with the number 3, and they want to be like number 3. True story. True story. They don't stop to realize, they don't stop to realize that they might be selling less cars now, number 3, but they know that train's coming. And price an item, you can do it all day long, like Jason said, and everybody knows that. But at some point, the creative message here, they always say content is king. It's going to come right down to that. And do you have an attractive, unique selling proposition? Is your brand something that is friendly? It provides a value for everybody. And we need to tell that story in a way that is unique to you. I say to every dealer, if you can take your ad and I can switch the logo out on the end of that ad, whatever it is, display ad, video ad, whatever it is, if I can just simply switch the logo or the address out, you don't have a brand. That is not a brand.
It's funny. And those of you who are listening to today's podcast, obviously you've listened to other interviews, and somebody recently said something to me, Jim, and it just triggered. I never thought of it this way. But someone said, "Hey, Brian, man, your brand is really on fire." And I mean, well, like, what do you mean? It's like, man, it just seems like you're in a good spot. People are talking about your content. You're being referenced at 20 group meetings. Man, that's just amazing. And, I'm listening to you, and now I'm chuckling inside. I'm like, yeah, that's 18 years of content. That's literally, I think there's 700 LinkedIn articles that I've published over time. It's 10 books. It's speaking at conferences. It's doing free webinars. Content is king. And I think that dealers who have primarily done price payment and sponsorships, most dealers sponsor.
Sure.
If they've mostly done price payment, there's nothing memorable in that.
Nope.
Brian, I want to congratulate you on being an 18-year overnight success.
Yes. It's pretty funny. I will tell you, though, when I look back at the older content, I chuckle. I've learned this research report we put out is the best work that we've done. There's something to say, Jim, when you say that Tropic Survival and Comet Ads is 35 years of innovation and we're not done. I love that tagline. That's how I feel. I'm in 18 years. I'm not done. I feel like I'm just hitting stride. So Jim, let's talk about this. And Jason, I want to have you jump in. Dealers typically find that the first month of working with a new agency or two is like the honeymoon period. Everything is great. And then it seems very common the dealers say, yeah, but after 3 months, like count support started to suck. And before you know it, I didn't feel I was getting any custom work. How do you prevent that? What I'm just going to say, the typical agency kind of like shoot your load early and then go back to no innovation.
Wow. So I'm going to throw this to Jason, but I love the word innovation. I love it so much. We're actually part of the NSU Nova Southeast Innovation Program. And we have a technology, which is a video marketing platform that we're actually creating there. And we've been working on that for 2 or 3 years. That's what we're doing on the side for fun. For fun, we're doing that. It is groundbreaking. It has 2 U.S. patents on it. That's how unique it is. So we live, we eat, we breathe it way in front of the dealers. They shouldn't have to wait for us. They should be, when they see us coming, they should almost be hiding, because we're going to ask them to do something new that will make them feel uncomfortable. And my job and Jason's job is to make you feel just slightly uncomfortable and get you out of your comfort zone. There's a throttle though. We have 100 things we can throw at you. We can't do that too much though. It's every 90 days. What is a new initiative that we can figure out that would work for you? And we have a bag full of tricks and innovation that is mind-bending stuff, but we have to throttle that. So that's not a problem on our side. I think one thing that we also look at too is, if you looked at our team, Brian, and if you looked at every one of them, I think you'd see maybe 2 or 3 juniors there. Everybody else is 10, 15, 20 years experience. So one of our dealers, the whole group decided they were going to consolidate and they were going to move to one single point agency. That was awesome. That dealer received a 23-year-old young man who had never even owned a car because he Ubered to the dealership, and he was their point person now. Not going to happen.
How did that work out?
Yeah. Well, I had some fun with it. Let's just say that.
Wow. So, Jason, same question. How do you keep the team motivated after the win, after the new client, buzz is over? It just seems over and over again. I hear this story. The first 6 months were great, and then not so great.
Yeah, I think of the story of the tortoise and the hare. Is about pacing ourselves. We don't over celebrate the close. When it happens, we're happy, right? But we don't expend all of our energy in the first month or few months of the relationship, and then kind of burn out. You've got to pace yourself too. A client can be over demanding, and then what your reaction to that is to yourself pull back for some self-preservation. So it's about setting boundaries and expectations, and not letting the relationship start to suck you dry. Because even if you're doing your best to do well, and your intentions are the best, and it wasn't your intention to go hot and heavy for 90 days and then put it on autopilot, you can find yourself doing that if you get burned out early. Also, pacing on budget too. We will tell clients, if you're going to embark on this path on creative and differentiating your brand, there needs to be a budget for this throughout the year, not just the first shoot, but at what point is that going to get stale? And let's make sure there's budget for another shoot and another production package as well. So just making sure that expectations are right, boundaries are set, and that we have a full forecast of what's going to happen over the next 12 months, not just what's going to happen as we come out the gates.
Jason, that is really sound advice. And I know that at the beginning, sometimes dealers, especially if they had a very poor experience with their agencies, like, we got to do this, and setting expectations. I think it's an art form of setting expectations without making the client feel like you're not going to give them 100%. It's never about not giving them 100%, but it's also about setting up a cadence for the creative, the execution, the measurement. All of those things take a little time. Jason, as the VP agency director at Comet Ads, responsible for all the digital delivery of your dealer messaging, out of all the technologies we've seen, ChatGPT, thrown around as new tools for creatives, new automated drawing tools, video tools, obviously the connection of digital TV to matching into the DMS or CRM for sales. You see it all.
Yeah.
Out of all the things that you're the most excited for in the year ahead, what would it be? What should dealers know about that you think is going to help them reach their sales objectives as competition gets back to normal? People are cutting prices, supply and demand comes back into alignment. What would you tell them?
I'm most excited about AI becoming ubiquitous to our lives and how we do business. Right now, it's a shiny object. What people don't realize, it's been in play for a little bit. It's just now in a place where everyday people can interact with it and be impressed by it. But I'm most excited about continuing to drive AI in the background for data processing, for attribution, and just helping us drive things forward. So I have a similar thought on blockchain technology. I think that blockchain will not so much in alignment with this conversation today, but again, it's really going to get adoption once we no longer realize we're using blockchain to do day-to-day things. So I'm really excited about just more AI in the shadows, if you will.
Ryan Everson, he's the digital director for one of the larger dealer groups, the Garber Automotive Group in the US. And he said that AI is not going to put creatives out of business. Creatives who don't use AI will be out of business. And I like that, right? We all should be using the tools that make our time more effective, more efficient. As writers, we occasionally get into a writer's block to have tools to get us started. And consider, I love the different voices that ChatGPT. I never really thought of that, for myself, like, hey, what voice do I want to write this in? Because I'm always like, well, it's Brian's voice, when you're talking to a Subaru customer versus a Mercedes customer, having some experience in different voices, I think is really valuable, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's it's difficult for you to change your voice with the flip of the switch, but AI has no problem doing so.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, as we wrap up our conversation, first of all, it's great that we're both in Florida, and it's great that I'm meeting a peer who's put in the hard time of getting the right message at the right time to the right people for auto dealers. If a dealer listening to today's podcast say, man, competition's rising, inventory levels are coming back to normal, I got to get my A game. I'm number 2. I'm number 3. I want to be the lead dog in the market. I'm not going to get it through price payment. I better hire a pro. Jim, what's the best website? What's the best way for them to reach out to your group?
Yeah, so on our side, they can go right to tropicsurvival.com, or if it's a more of a digital question, cometads.com. And they can reach us there. I can give you my email address, which is jim@tropicsurvival.com, or jason@tropicsurvival.com as well. Any of those ways, we will definitely get in touch with you.
Well, I'm so glad you guys came on the podcast, because we're leading up to the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. And yes, we're going to be talking a lot about data. We're going to be talking about marketing automation, but your voice at the conference is going to bring balance that, yes, data is important, automation is important, but the message is the most important if we want to motivate consumers to consider our brand. For those of you who are listening to today's podcast, and if you haven't registered for the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, I want to encourage you to go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org and get your tickets before the conference sells out. You could use the promo code FOMO, F-O-M-O 200, save $200 off your ticket. You should know that the conference is Sunday afternoon, Monday and Tuesday, and we just announced an additional full day just for GA4, helping dealers inspect their GA4 accounts, make sure they're set up properly, make sure the conversion events are set up, make sure the reporting templates are useful. And we're limiting that class to just 50 dealership attendees. So if you haven't registered, it's in Austin, Texas. 10 years in Napa, that was enough. We're moving the show to a city that's more accessible, more affordable, and also a tremendous place for dealers to go to after a long day of training, going out and enjoying some local music. So for everyone who's listening to today's podcast, this is one of a series of interviews leading up to the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, and there's dozens, over 100 different interviews on my podcast channel. So you can go to brianpash.libsyn, that's LIBSYN.com, to listen to all the episodes, or just go to your Google Play Store or the Apple Podcast or SoundCloud and just search for the Brian Pash Podcast. I want to thank Jim, Jason for being on today's show. Guys, are you excited about Austin, Texas?
Absolutely.
Loving it. Can't wait to see everybody.
All right. Well, it's going to be a great show. And this year, we're going to be focusing on first-party data management, the rise of CDPs, marketing automation. We're going to be talking about the use of AI in sales process and in marketing. Of course, we're going to be talking about creative, SEO, all the topics that, well, help dealers realize their business objectives in a digital age. Thanks for listening to today, and I'll catch you next time on another podcast interview.